You're looking right at the camera. Hi. Welcome to a live and in-person. This is our first time recording in person ever.
Yes.
I mean, we're in person. I mean, not as much as I'd like to be, but enough. But we are in the same space. Will this be weird, us kind of looking and having a conversation like that?
Only if we do the eyes.
Yeah. Okay. Which we are. Okay. Welcome everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Slumber Party Podcast. I'm Manchusen. This is
Liza Ramna.
Oh yeah. And I realized something today that when I was talking about Slumber Party that I will still write I talked about, but you were also there. But I'm so used to talking about just myself.
No, but you do a lot of talking. No. You know, I always look at your mouth.
I know,
this is my history.
I know, it's true. I'll be eating and she's like, and so for those who are listening to that, it's her mimicking me eating while I'm eating. Yeah. So that's normal.
I'm a feeder, so I like to watch people eat,
Yeah.
And you're like a sleeper, so you like to train people how to sleep.
I do like to. I was like, I don't like watching people sleep. That's very invasive.
Yeah.
It's why I can't sleep on airplanes. It's like, don't look at me.
Yeah.
Today we asked the Instagram what we should talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm liking this vibe of kind of asking people because we're getting really good questions that I always think that we talk about that we don't.
Yep.
Today's question was on the question was highly spirited 14-month-old. Can we still train? Is it too late? And we get that question all of the time. Is it too late? When is too late? And so we're going to answer that. And I also kind of want to pair this topic with the concept or the idea of highly spirited, highly sensitive kids, or these are not my words because I just don't like it for some reason, but high needs children. Mm-hmm. I don't like that because I think all children are high needs. All children have high needs, not just your child. Now, how they express that is probably more related to their temperament. Anyway, we're going to talk about all of that today. Are you excited?
I'm in.
So just, before we jump in, we were actually talking about this a little bit briefly. We try not to talk too much about our topics before.
Yeah.
But do you think that they're just in your non-sleep training knowledge, is there too late of a time? Like, what would you think the answer to that would be?
I would, if I didn't know as much as I do know now, I think that I would think that there would be some sort of like developmental sort of barrier, right?
Yeah.
But I know more than you think.
I mean,
this is the awkwardness that you get when
it's in person. Well, it's weird because we don't have the budget to have like 2 desks and 2 computers, and or like a camera where like 2 people are looking at each other, or they have like their own podcast mic.
Right.
That'll come. Like if you go like, subscribe, and review, and we have high ratings, then I can tell a podcast production company that, and then we can do that. So that's what the people want.
Make it happen, people.
Make it happen. Anyway.
But just, knowing that, like, my history with my husband, and you've offered help to teach him how to sleep.
I was just going to say, you need to elaborate on that. My history with my husband. It's like,
Technical difficulties.
Sorry. Well, this is something that you'll only get in person too, because I move a lot and I'm going to have to be calmer. Yeah. So
my husband's sleep history is dicey. He's just the worst sleeper, and this has been an issue forever, and so you've offered so graciously sometimes to get him on the phone and get his stuff figured out, and I think now is actually the time we're going to do it, because he's really struggling. So I do know that even people in their mid-40s can learn how to sleep.
I was just going to say thank you for clarifying his age, because her husband perpetually looks 25. So no one knows how old he is.
Yep.
Like every year we're like, happy birthday.
You vampire.
You 40-year-old?
Yeah.
Oh, what is it? So we don't know. Yeah. And this is when we go back to the idea. I was actually listening to our Is Sleep Training Safe episode on the way here, just to make sure. I always listen to make sure it sounded okay.
I don't, because I am too cringy.
I know it is cringy, but then there's also part of me that's like, what if we said something inappropriate, or like, I need to check.
Yeah.
It's an anxiety
Totally.
thing. I don't like it. It's agonizing. Just like when I'm on TV and I have to watch back to make sure it was okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm sitting there like just listening to it like this.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I never have to do that.
Yeah, no, but you're so good. You're awesome with this.
Well, thank you. Anyway, so I was listening to that, and we were on that episode, we were talking about the debate of whether or not sleep is a skill, and people talking about, oh, it's a skill. No, it's not. And it's funny when you talk about adults who aren't sleeping, we do talk about the behaviors and skills associated with sleep. So sleep very much, I believe, I have a belief that sleep is effortless. It's a biological need, and we do it effortlessly. We get into trouble when we put in a whole bunch of things before sleep, and then as adults we rely on these set of things to sleep, and then those stop being effective, and then that's when you get into tricky business. I think that's the same with our babies and our children, that we, do something to help them sleep. The baby becomes reliant on that, and they are no longer able to access their ability to sleep effortlessly. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's let's go Google that later. But so then when people say, is it too late? Is it too late for me to sleep train? I mean, I say absolutely not. It's never too late. It's what you do and how you do it to implement those skills that would be different. So, and with a 14-month-old, you are getting into toddler stuff. And I just confirmed with my friend, Dr. Tanya Kotler, we are going to do an episode in July on toddler sleep, because I think it's sort of like, you hear about baby sleep because infants are so tough, and then there's nothing. And then people are like, what about my 2-year-old? We're going to talk about that for sure.
Yeah.
But then I think about, so 14-month-olds in general are tougher. You go from like having this little itty bitty baby to having a person that's like, no, and then melting down. And the idea of being like, well, I'm going to put you in the crib and say sleep on your own is terrifying. And I've talked about this on this podcast for years, that I was legitimately afraid of my toddler. I would have anxiety going to pick her up from daycare because I was so anxious about her big feelings.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good accounts, like Big Little Feelings, Janet Lansbury, that really have normalized those toddler feelings. So here's what my answer to that is. It is not too late to sleep train your child. I cannot guarantee the level of protest and pushback that you will have.
Right.
And that, I think, is something that parents need to be prepared for. And so when I'm doing a discovery call with a toddler client and they say, okay, what's going to be the difference? I say, well, we're going to talk to the child during the process. They have language acquisition generally at some point. They're understanding a lot more, maybe not every word, but a lot more intention. We give a lot of pep talks, a lot of prep time. Here's what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. I'm going to come and check, or I'm going to sit beside your crib, and then I'm going to leave. Like, just really utilizing that language acquisition and seeing it as a benefit in the process could be really helpful. Here's what I can't change. I cannot change the fact that your child is probably going to lose their mind, like in such a big way. And so I always say toddlers are the loudest. They're going to be, but then it's super quick.
Yes.
I want to say it's so quick, and it doesn't mean, like, generally these are things that you've seen before, and probably the person who asked us this question is asking us this question because they're like, I know how my toddler is when I give them a blue cup instead of the red cup. I can only imagine what it's going to be like. Yeah, well, it's probably going to be similar. And sometimes we can lessen the impact or lessen the amount of protest. Well, number one, we're psychologically ready. There's some psychological safety in the process. So we know this is going to be tough. So then you come in with calmer. I'm looking at your sons. We're recording in Lisa's son's room, and there's something that says good vibes, which is very perfect because we want to go in with those good vibes.
Yes.
We want to go in, buddy, your feelings are safe with me. You are having such a big, giant, huge tantrum, and that's safe with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to hold this boundary anyway. I'm not going to assist you to sleep. And it's generally going to go by pretty quickly. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think I was just thinking that it's so true because they do come with all of these learned behaviors, like if you're sleep training for the first time at that age. But then that ability to sort of describe it to them and go through it, and I always say that if you just smile physically and you speak to them, it actually changes your voice in the way that you come off to them. So I always do that. Sometimes I do it like this, but just having that different disposition and just having that like smile voice rather than, like with the frustration. And like, I think for sure the key to sleep training a toddler is in the parent.
Totally.
And the way that you approach that, because like yesterday I had a whole freak out because I am so tired of picking up my kids from school and looking forward to it and then getting completely shat on, excuse my language. Like every single day, I feel like for the last 2 weeks, like this one didn't like their lunch. This one didn't like what I brought for them as a snack. And it's like, I'm here with a snack. And of course you can't really verbalize that to your kid, which I kind of tried to yesterday until my husband walked in and was like, right, cut that out.
Also, I love when you're like, hey, I brought you this snack, and they're like, yeah, but it sucked. Like they're not computing it.
Yeah. And I'm just, yeah, exactly. I feel like yesterday was like the combination of like everything just coming together. And I was telling Clayton, I'm like, I cannot stand another pickup. Like I get the worst of them, and you do. And at bedtime, the same thing. So yes,
it's a lot.
I concur.
Well, and you're talking about the parent. Generally, when parents have avoided sleep training, I would say until 14 months or older, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And it means that generally they might be struggling with the crying part. That might be worth having a chat with someone about. Like, I want to prep myself. Actually, that's something that our company has started doing kind of organically. So we have 3 social workers on our team who have been providing pre-counseling sessions and helping folks create distress plans for when their child is crying.
Yeah.
How to regulate yourself. And you were talking about going in with the smile to kind of change the energy. If that's working for you, I love that. I also like the idea of creating a mantra. My therapist told me, you can tell yourself, I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing the best I can. And I really like that because it changed a lot for me. The other thing, sometimes it can be hard to like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. Like when you're kind of going into this situation and your child is looking at you and they're like, and there's a level of dishonesty in the person's body with being like, it's okay. And the child is like, well, no, it's not okay.
Yes.
And so
honesty for sure.
Yeah. If you are like, a lot of my clients have liked the strategy of leveling with the child. So it's like, this sucks for both of us, but I promise you I'm here for you during this time.
Yeah.
And it's going to be over soon. You're going to get it. I'm going to be here with you the whole way through.
Yeah. I think like my point is that just instead of being like, I know this sucks, as opposed to being like, I know this totally sucks, like just having
that genuine energy.
Yes.
Versus it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Everything is fine.
Like a little puppet. Because then the kid's like, that you're being weird.
Yes.
Right? Being so
you're
weird.
Not yourself. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's funny. We recently hired a nanny. Thank God. Yeah, I know. I was like in denial for the last 2 years about needing a nanny, and then I'm back now. And my daughter was talking to me. We hired someone so lovely, and I was like, "Oh, how'd it go?" She came over yesterday. I'm like, "What did you think?" And she's like, "I just love people who are themselves." Who I know. She's like 9. She's like, "I just feel like I can tell when they're being themselves, and they don't talk to me like I'm a little baby."
Yeah.
And she's like, so, when people are like, "Hi," and I was like, kids are the ultimate bullshit detectors, and they're the best. And this is like, I taught middle school for most of my career, and I think I did well because I knew that they were always evaluating me, and I was always honest with them.
Yeah.
And if you're like, "I'm the one in charge, I'm doing this," you will fail in middle school as a teacher because they'll eat you alive. They're like, "No, I'm in charge. We are a mob. We'll destroy your self-esteem, your self-confidence." I don't know, I'm afraid of middle schoolers.
Yeah, we're a mob of preteen girls. It's like everybody can relate how scary that can
And the worst time of my life was in middle school. I just know, and that doesn't change. Yeah. That's an innate survival skill.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of that to go back to, yes, you can. It is never too late. The amount of protests that you might get in that specific time and space might be more, generally out of frustration, a lack of language skills. Now, here's what's really cool. With my 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds that we work with, we tend to actually see a lot less protests because they have that language and you can totally negotiate with them. So sometimes, I just did this last weekend with a client. I wrote it a script. We had a 6-year-old who is frequently leaving their bedroom, and it's like, "Well, what happens next?" And I was like, "Here's what you're going to level with them. This is what we're going to do. If you leave, I'm going to have to shut your door. I really don't think we're going to have to do that. Like, I think that you get it." And it worked, right? We can totally negotiate and use those skills that our children have. Generally, the protest that's happening is due to a lack of communication skills. So we tend to see less as the child gets older. If that makes people feel better. Yeah. But on the other side of this, if you go, there's been a number of times where I'm on a discovery call with a client and they're like, "I did a test on the internet if your baby is high needs or not. And my baby came up as high needs. Or my baby is highly spirited. My baby or my child is different from all of the other children." And I would say, for us, for most people that are hiring a sleep consultant, we are dealing with those kids. We are not dealing with the chilled out little amoeba. Oops, sorry. We don't deal with the chilled out little amoeba. We deal with those highly spirited, highly attuned, highly connected and aware children. We're not dealing I would argue, my first is pretty highly spirited, but she was really non-temperamental for sleep. And there are kids who, high needs doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do the work. It means that they need a lot of clarity and direction.
Yep.
And that's really I worked with this wonderful, lovely family, right in I think 2020. And the little guy was 3 years old. And the family had talked to me about, I have the parents both identified as having ADHD. The extended family had ADHD. They had suspected their child had ADHD. And they were like, "Will this work? Will this work?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And as a teacher, my ADHD kids really always benefited from broken down, clear, concise direction. And that is what we do in our work. And sometimes it's just if a parent tells me, oh, I've been trying so hard, I'm rocking, patting, shushing, even all my help is no longer working to sleep, I know that that kid, they're not going to be harder. They're going to be my easiest because they just want it to be clear. They don't want rocking, patting, shushing. They just like, I want one thing. That's it.
Yeah.
So, I hear a lot of that, high needs, highly spirited. Although there is protest in every single method, gentle, not, if you, like I always say, if you go onto these like gentle sleep trainers websites, they're always like gentle, gentle, gentle. Then there's a disclaimer that we can't guarantee no tears. Obviously, no one can.
You can't guarantee no tears even when you bring them all the things they want for snack.
I have a client who was talking to me recently about does sleep training totally stop crying? And I'm like, what you're asking me is, can I reprogram your child not to feel feelings and express them? And I won't do that. And that's not what we do. There are parents who have their babies and they're like, da, 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 and the baby is crying on them. I can't stop that. That's who that baby is.
Yes.
So if you have a high needs, highly spirited, maybe you have a baby who's a little more temperamental, you can totally, totally, totally do this work with them. It's not going to be this huge trauma. It's not going to be a big issue. It's going to be, what it's going to be. Your kid is going to show up as themselves, but they're also going to be thankful for the clarity that you're providing around the sleep situation.
Yeah.
And then you also have to think about what the outside benefits are, right? So if you're enjoying assisting your kid to sleep, fine, that's one thing. But if you're not, and you are a cranky parent and you are, kind of snapping at your kids, you're sleep deprived, I don't have the capacity to deal with any bullshit at all when I'm sleep deprived. If my kids are like, didn't like the yogurt, I'm like, of course you didn't like the yogurt. Like I'm not showing up. So how could sleep in this case be benefiting the whole unit, where you do have this kid who's maybe a little more sensitive, has really big emotions? How can we increase your capacity so their feelings are safe with you? Right?
Yeah.
Like how is that not a benefit or an advantage to you or your child? So I am, again, I think that there would be no reason. I follow Dr. Anya McLaren. Her Instagram account is called The Sleep Gap, and she is a pediatric sleep respirologist. She helps people with sleep apnea. She's a big fan of at-home interventions that parents can do. And she talked a lot about, there's no reason that we can't help our highly sensitive or ADHD or even children on the autism spectrum with clear direction that's kind and loving and gentle around sleep. So again, another 22-minute answer.
So good.
On that question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the beauty is you can talk about this forever. And like I don't know if people remember this, but we always talk about how when you were first pregnant, many people were like, what are you going to do about sleep? Like you had no sleep like training ambitions whatsoever. And so many people approached you. I was like, I think you could benefit from a night nurse. Like you should really look into that.
I know.
That everybody knows Amanda needs her sleep when you travel with her. So
I'm
everybody, yeah.
Well,
and you could talk about this forever, I'm sure.
It's funny, like people would give me like travel suggestions or something, or it's mostly around like, yeah, and then we like stayed in this hotel and like my kids shared, and I'm like, no one shares. No one shares. No one shares. And it's like, because that's what I want. I'm totally projecting.
Yeah.
But my children have totally become like princesses of their sleep environment. Now look, they go to camp, they sleep in many conditions, they do well.
Yeah.
But we do have our preferences. Like I know that my kids would like to sleep in a dark room.
Yeah.
And just like live their best life. They all like to really sleep a lot, or read a lot before bed. Yeah. So that's become a thing. But we tried, went to Dominican in January for my husband's like work thing, and I thought we would go to Toronto the night before, get a hotel. I just got like a cheap and cheerful airport hotel. What a disaster that was! I had the girls sharing, and then it ended up me sleeping with my 8-year-old who like sleeps like this, and like halfway through the night I had to pick her up and move her back, and then I got the 6-year-old who sleeps like this in a bed instead of this. So never again. I will give you all of my money for comfortable individualized sleeping situations.
No,
even my daughter had a sleepover. I have these travel portable sleep beds that everyone, it's like $100. I'm telling you, it's memory foam. Everyone had their own bed. Then when we were going to New York in November, I was staying at a place before. We were staying at our friend's house in Toronto the night before, and she's like, I want you to come. I just literally don't have a bed for you. I was like, don't worry. I'll bring my own little portable bed. And I did. And I found a spot and I slept like a dream.
So yeah, point proven.
This does not necessarily align with anything on this topic, but I'm so serious about sleep. I need sleep. I need good sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate that about you. And I think it's so important to be honest, right? Like about like the way that you are so special.
Well, and what's funny about all of this too is that I'm going to a conference this weekend in Arizona.
Oh, that's right.
And there are all of these people. So there's like an app for the conference, and you can like, kind of connect with people before you go.
Yeah.
And there are all of these people being like, anyone want to share like a hotel room? And I was like, no, I would never. I would with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would with like my husband.
Right.
But that it's just like, I don't like people watching me sleep. But it's a very select group of people that I would share a room with.
And you and I have been doing this since high school. So
like we've slept in the same bed many times.
Yeah.
Toronto, High Park.
But we're compatible sleepers. Like I fall asleep and don't move. No. Don't make any noise. No. And
you will sleep under my conditions.
Yeah, and I'll do I'm like, what else? It's all good. Yeah. Close all the windows. Not even a crack.
I mean, I can have a cracked window. I like moving it.
No. I mean the lights.
Oh, yeah. No,
yeah.
For sure.
You used to come over. Actually, my friend Fawn as well did this, I think, after she worked with you, maybe. Yeah. Anyways, but she would come and cover all the windows with garbage bags, and you used to do that too. Yeah.
I know who I am.
You preach.
I practice.
Which okay.
Yeah, I'm
it's
serious
Friday,
business.
Guys.
Like, and thank goodness, by the way, because I often, when I do media stuff, I find that the hosts will be like, "Hey, I just have a question about my sleep." Like, they'll throw me for a loop, and I legitimately know it because I'm so obsessed.
Yeah,
with my own sleep.
Yeah,
it's never too late to sleep train your kiddo. High needs, high spirited, all of those things. That was the dog. That wasn't any of us. I don't know if the mic picked that up, but we have a snoring dog next to us. Those are definitely things, but sleep work can actually be really beneficial for both the parent and the child. We might not be able to get past that protest, but there's probably lots of areas of your life where that is also the case. And yeah, that's it for today. Find us on Instagram at Baby's Best Sleep. You can find Liza at BBS_LIZA. We're on TikTok at Baby's Best Sleep, babysbestsleep.com. Come find us. We'd love to chat with you. Bye.
Bye.